All right, so our essential question for Module 3 is how do stories help us understand immigrants' experiences? So, this is the question I want us to keep in mind as we continue with Module 3. Now, our focusing question for the next couple of lessons is going to be what challenges do immigrants face in a new country? So, today's content framing question, also known as our objective, the question that you must be able to answer by the end of this lesson, is what do I notice and wonder about grandfather's journey? All right. So today we're going to be reading a new text called Grandfather's Journey by Alan Say. And I want you to be thinking about important details that you notice from the pictures and words as well as questions. All right, so before we begin reading our text, Grandfather's Journey today, I want us to take a look at this image called Japanese Immigrant's Trunk. Okay. And as you're looking at this image, I want you to be thinking, what do I notice about this object? And what am I wondering about this object? And what might the purpose be for this object? Now I'm going to read to you the last paragraph of the description of this image. This trunk belonged to Kumataro Sugimoto, who immigrated to Hawaii from Kumamoto, Japan about 1902. After hearing stories of quick wealth, Kumataro left for Hawaii to seek his fortune. Later, he brought his sons to help him on the plantation. One of his sons, Kichiso, married an American-born Japanese woman and started a family in Hawaii. Inscriptions on the trunk include Sugimoto, the family name, and Hawaii, the destination. This was a common practice for identification on any long voyage. This trunk, or tronko, made of leather and paper, carried kimono and other personal belongings. Immigrants also carried yanagi-gori, suitcases made of willow branches, and others made of bamboo and rattan, as well as cloth bags. So now what I want you to do is I want you to read the first sentence and the last sentence with me. Okay? So we're going to read it together. As I'm reading it, I want you to read with me. Okay? This trunk belonged to Kumataro Sugimoto, who immigrated to Hawaii from Kumamoto, Japan about 1902. The last sentence. Immigrants also carried yanagi-gori, suitcases made of willow branches, and others made of bamboo and rattan, as well as cloth bags. So, in our focusing question and our essential question, as well as the first and last sentence of this paragraph, you'll notice the word immigrant or immigrated. And that's a key word for Module 3. From the context of this paragraph and from the image, we can see here that the word immigrant is a word for people who permanently moved to a country where they were not born. For example, this trunk belonged to an immigrant named Kumataro Sugimoto. We know he is an immigrant because he is moving or taking a long voyage from Kumamoto, Japan to Hawaii, which is a state in the United States. So for context, I'm going to show you what a kimono looks like. Kimono is traditional Japanese clothing. And also, I'm going to show you on the map of how far Japan is from Hawaii. So you can see how far he traveled with this trunk. Here's a picture of what a kimono looks like. And here is how long it takes to get from Hawaii to Japan on an airplane, 7 hours. So before we get started with our new text today, I just wanted us to review what we've learned so far about why people like to explore. For example, in Module 1, we learned about one of our favorite explorers, Jacques Cousteau, who was amazed by the beauty of the sea and therefore explored the ocean. Also, we know of Dr. Clyde Roper, who also explored giant squid because he wanted to find out more about it. We know that Galileo also explored space because he was curious about what he noticed in the skies. And finally, our most recent topic, the Apollo 11 astronauts. We know that they explored the moon because they accepted President Kennedy's challenge to reach the moon. So in this module, Module 3, A New Home, we're going to be learning about people who choose to explore new places to live. And we're going to be learning about the challenges they face, the reasons that prompt them or make them go to seek new homes, and how they meet challenges in their new homes. Okay. So first, our first text is going to be Grandfather's Journey by Alan Say. And just like how we do in class, we are first going to be noticing and wondering just from looking at the cover of our book. So what I want you to do right now is take out a lined piece of paper, if you like, to make a notice and wonder chart. Or you can also write down your notes in a Google Doc that is in the assignment folder. All right. So what I want you to do right now is make that chart. And I want you to notice what you see here on the cover. I want you to think about the elements of art we've talked about since Module 1. What colors do you see? Who is the figure in this illustration? What kind of lines do you see? Look at the composition. What's closer to us? What's further away from us? What's bigger and what's smaller? What do you think is happening in this illustration? Again, remember for those wonders, the question words that we've been learning: who, what, when, where, how, and why, to help you with your wonderings. All right, so I hope you wrote down at least 2 in each category, 2 notices and 2 wonders. I want us to look at the word journey together. So looking at the word journey from the title of our book, all right? Since I can't ask you what you think the word journey means, I want you to think on your own, and I'm going to give you the definition in about 10 seconds. All right, so the word journey means a very long trip. However, the word journey can be used both as a noun but also as a verb, to take a very long trip. But in the case of our book, Grandfather's Journey, journey means a very long trip. And based off the illustration, I'm hoping that we saw that this man, we are not sure exactly who he is just yet, but he's in the ocean or in the sea. So what I want us to do now is to write down independently our notices and wonders without myself reading the book to you just yet. What we're going to do is I'm going to flip through this book, and as I'm flipping, I'm going to be stopping. And when I stop, I want you to write down what you notice from the illustrations or from the words, okay? I also want you to write down any questions, any wonders that you may have from those pictures and the words. I know this is a little strange because we're doing this via video, but I want us to do our best, okay? All right. Also, if there are any words that you see that you don't know, please write them down on the side, just like we did in class. Title it Unknown Words, and please write it down. I'll show you really quick what that looks like. But on the side of your notes, or if you're writing notes on a tablet or computer, please write it down like this on the side and write it down. If you have your ELA notebooks and you picked it up in school on Friday, you can also write this down in your response section. If you want to stay on a certain page longer, please just pause the video at that page and you can continue writing, and then you can continue to play the video. Also, I am seeing some figurative language in this book, so if you can find those examples, that'd be pretty great too. Grandfather's Journey by Alan Say. My grandfather was a young man when he left his home in Japan and went to see the world. He wore European clothes for the first time and began his journey on a steamship. The Pacific Ocean astonished him. For 3 weeks, he did not see land. When land finally appeared, it was the New World. He explored North America by train and riverboat and often walked for days on end. Deserts with rocks like enormous sculptures amazed him. The endless farm fields reminded him of the ocean he had crossed. Huge cities of factories and tall buildings bewildered and yet excited him. He marveled at the towering mountains and rivers as clear as the sky. He met many people along the way. He shook hands with black men and white men, with yellow men and red men. The more he traveled, the more he longed to see new places and never thought of returning home. Of all the places he visited, he liked California best. He loved the strong sunlight there, the Sierra Mountains, the lonely seacoast. After a time, he returned to his village in Japan to marry his childhood sweetheart. Then he brought his bride to the new country. They made their home by the San Francisco Bay and had a baby girl. As his daughter grew, my grandfather began to think about his own childhood. He thought about his old friends. He remembered the mountains and rivers of his home. He surrounded himself with songbirds, but he could not forget. Finally, when his daughter was nearly grown, he could wait no more. He took his family and returned to his homeland. Once again, he saw the mountains and rivers of his childhood. They were just as he had remembered them. Once again, he exchanged stories and laughed with his old friends. But the village was not a place for a daughter from San Francisco, so my grandfather bought a house in a large city nearby. There, the young woman fell in love, married, and sometime later, I was born. When I was a small boy, my favorite weekend was a visit to my grandfather's house. He told me many stories about California. He raised warblers and silver eyes, but he could not forget the mountains and rivers of California, so he planned a trip. But a war began. Bombs fell from the sky and scattered our lives like leaves in a storm. When the war ended, there was nothing left of the city and of the house where my grandparents had lived. So they returned to the village where they had been children. But my grandfather never kept another songbird. The last time I saw him, my grandfather said that he longed to see California one more time. He never did. And when I was nearly grown, I left home and went to see California for myself. After a time, I came to love the land my grandfather had loved, and I stayed on and on until I had a daughter of my own. But I also missed the mountains and rivers of my childhood. I miss my old friends. So I return now and then when I cannot still the longing in my heart. The funny thing is, the moment I am in one country, I am homesick for the other. I think I know my grandfather now. I miss him very much. So after reading this text to you out loud, what I want you to do is I want you to answer the question in your Google Doc, in your classwork section. The question reads, based on the text and illustrations, which of the places grandfather visited would you choose as a new home, and why? So I want you to make sure you use your sentence starter to make sure that you answer the question correctly. Before you get started answering that question, what I want you to first do is identify the genre of this book. I know that we've been talking a lot about identifying the genre when we're doing test prep, but it's also important to use that skill when we're reading new text as well. So hopefully, after reading this book together, you notice that the genre of this book is fiction. Specifically, the genre of this book is realistic or historical fiction. This book is realistic or historical fiction, one, because there are no nonfiction text features, right? But the events that happen in this book could be true. However, Alan Say did not experience these events, and he did make this up with his imagination. All right, that concludes today's lesson. Please make sure that you finish the classwork, which includes the notice and wonder, as well as the question that you need to answer. Also, there is another question on Google Classroom of answering what is the genre of the book Grandfather's Journey. That'll let me know if you were paying attention throughout the whole video. And finally, you have an exit ticket, which is a postcard to grandfather. The directions are on the assignment page. So you just need to click there, read the directions, and write a postcard to grandfather. And it needs to be at least 4 sentences long, but you'll see that in that section. Alrighty, good luck!